ready for a shock. The music that they're planning to use to crumble the morals of America is this rotten, filthy, dirty, lewd, lascivious junk called rock and roll. It isn't just the lyrics, it's the beat.
Infernal Rock Radio.
station built by the bands for the fans, Inferno Rock Radio. That was Thou by Endurance We Conquer. I am joined by Adam. He runs Gilead Media. How you doing, Adam?
I am great. How are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. So I asked you for a couple songs to play during the interview, and that was the first one you picked. Why'd you pick that one?
Well, that record, doing that album Summit that song's off of, it kind of came along at a time when I was really in the dumps about the label, and I wasn't originally supposed to release that on CD. Southern Lord was supposed to. So when I first heard it, I told Brian, I was like, this is one of the best records I've ever heard. Like, with unbiased, I told him, I'm like, regardless of how well I know you guys, like this, it's like, for me, it's like one of the perfect records. It's exactly like the stuff that I prefer most. And then I just ended up getting lucky enough to actually release it. And between that and the Kralis Dimensional Bleed Through LP, which kind of came out around the same period of time, those two records kind of helped me get my energy back for the label. So those are two albums that I always cite as like kind of things that just kind of helped refill the batteries and re-energize me. And that's still that album, Thou's Summit, is still one of my favorite records. I listen to it all the time, especially during the summer. I feel like it's a warm weather album.
Awesome. So how long have you been doing the Gilead Media label?
It's been about 6 years, and it started out slower. I actually did some more kind of DIY style handmade CDs when I was living out in Ohio, before the label really got going. And it really kind of kicked into gear once I moved back to Wisconsin right around 2006.
Okay, so you started it out in Ohio then?
Yeah. It actually started while I was living out there. I grew up in Wisconsin. I was born here, born in Oshkosh, and I lived out in Ohio for a couple years for a job working at like a music distributor. And while I was out there, there were other guys I worked with that had labels, and I was obviously like immersed in independent music and getting to know all these other guys that ran labels that we distributed and everything. And the more I learned, it seems like it's kind of easy to do sort of just like a small independent label for fun. And that's when I kind of jumped in. I did a split CD between my band at the time and one of our friends, and the CD for that band, A Scanner Darkly, the Philip K. Dick sort of sludgy, grindy band from Minneapolis, and a couple other things. But yeah, once I moved back to Wisconsin, that's when I kind of kicked it into high gear and really started pumping out the releases more.
So do you still consider it a hobby then, or now is it more?
Well, it's sort of like a hobby that takes up all of my free time and that I don't really make any money off of. It's definitely still a hobby. Like, I still have a full-time job. I still have other stuff that I work on the side, and it's not something that I really necessarily want to be my full-time job. I'm working in independent music for 5-6 years, kind of revealed to me this world where people would start labels for fun and do it for the right reasons and be really successful, and things would go well, and then they'd kind of try to transition into making that their job and relying on the label for a paycheck. And it seemed like once that started happening for a lot of these labels, unless they were like very, very diligent about maintaining their DIY ethics and their true independence, it seemed like the quality of the releases was going down, and just in general it seemed like it was turning into something that wasn't fun anymore. And I really don't want that to happen. I just want the label to kind of always be this sort of thing that I do for fun when I have the time and I have the energy that I can allocate towards it, I do. And then when I don't have to rely on it for a paycheck.
So how do you choose who you're going to work with and stuff then? I mean, if this is just a hobby and you're not in it, I mean, obviously you want to pay the bills of the label and everything, but, I guess, how do you go about choosing who you want to work with and stuff, since this is your free time, this is your hobby?
Well, at first I started out doing a lot more like licensing CDs or albums that were released on CD, licensing the vinyl rights for those, like with the Minsk Ritual Fires double LP and the Mouth of the Architect Ties That Blind double LP. That was kind of what I started doing when I did those Me Without You records, just because that was at sort of a time when a lot of labels that were putting out CDs weren't doing vinyl. It was kind of almost just as vinyl was starting to explode into this big thing again. and since I knew a lot of labels and worked in the industry, it was really easy to kind of reach out to these people that I sort of already halfway knew, or we had mutual friends that could kind of vouch for me that I wasn't just some kid, and kind of make those connections and get people to license me the rights for the record. So at first it was just records that I personally loved. I was like, oh, I want this on vinyl. This should be on vinyl. And then I'd kind of think about it and think if other people were interested too and go for it. Now though, it's kind of, with as busy as I am working on some other projects and with the full-time job, I haven't had as much time to kind of explore and find new music as I used to. And I don't know if that's maybe just like a byproduct of getting older or whatever, but now it's almost like, and maybe because the label's so busy, but a lot of the bands I work with now are sort of like just recommended to me from bands that I've worked with prior. So, I mean, I started doing Thou Records back in 2008 when I did the Tyrant CD, and then they suggested the Ashbore. They talked about how great the Ashbore guys were, and I worked out doing the Ashbore Fell Voices split, and then obviously Bargast is members from Thou, and False was a band that Thou turned me on to. So it's a lot of little stuff like that. And then there's bands like Northless, which I've actually been following a long time, being that we're both from Wisconsin and they're from Milwaukee. And I kind of been watching them grow from being like this two-piece, really awesome heavy band to a fully fleshed out, totally misanthropic sludge band that I love. So it's kind of, there's still some of those out there that I'll follow and kind of get in touch with about doing something, but a lot more lately it's been things that are suggested. And like with Krallis, the only reason I really started working with them was because I did a record for Colin Marston, who's in Krallis, one of his old projects in Jericho there. I did like an LP and CD release for, and when before the self-titled Krallis CD was even out, he just reached out to me and told me a bit about it and told me that Mick Barr was involved and you know, Lev and Nick and everything, and I was interested, and it's just kind of something that kind of happened organically, having that relationship already.
Cool. So what do you think is the, you know, obviously, or at least I feel, looking at your label and some of the other smaller labels, that the vinyl thing, especially with the smaller independent labels, seems to be a big deal nowadays. What do you think is kind of fueling that resurgence?
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, a lot of it probably has to do with the fact that vinyl is, I don't know. For me personally, my preference is the you know, you get the artwork bigger, and it feels like a more personal thing when you have the vinyl record, and I like the large format of it. And I mean, obviously, you'd be a liar if you denied the trend of vinyl. Obviously there's people that buy it because they think it's cool and whatever. And I don't think with a lot of punk and DIY sort of music too, vinyl never really went anywhere either. You know, like there's always been vinyl editions of punk records and DIY sort of records out there. And I think that the DIY mindset's just been shifting a bit from punk into more of the metal realms. And that's, to me, I think that's part of what has sort of fueled the interest in metal, like black metal and doom records and stuff like that. All that stuff being on vinyl is because the type of people buying vinyl, their tastes are changing maybe too, and shifting more in that direction. But I guess it's kind of just a mix between those two things for me.
Okay. So with the whole, you know, being that you run a label and this whole digital age thing and kind of changing the way the music industry is going, how do you feel that's affected you at all? How do you think that the digital age is affecting the music industry? Where do you think it'll go in the future?
I think the future is a hard thing to say, just because if someone would have asked 10 years ago if they would have thought this is where it would be now, as digital stuff was starting to take off. I think iTunes launched right around early 2000s. I can't remember. But for me and for DIY labels and bands and things, I mean, as of right now, as long as the band's cool with it, I give away downloads of everything. And that's actually something that I was inspired to do when I started working with Thou and saw how much their fans appreciated being able to just download all of their records for free from their website. They've never made their music something that you had to pay for. If you want a physical format, obviously, but in terms of digital stuff, they've always just given away all their music. And that was something that I really liked, and I saw that people like that a lot too, and it just helped. For me, my point of view has always been, if someone doesn't want to pay for the record, making the you know making people forcing people to pay for MP3s isn't going to change anything. They're going to find a place to download it, whether you give it to them or not. So for me, my point of view is, be the source for those people to get the stuff. Then they're going to be able to get high quality artwork, at least for it, and the whatever format they want to download. If they're using Bandcamp, you can choose a variety of formats. At least they're going to get the best quality downloads instead of downloading some kid's crappy, vinyl rip that they used their USB record player to record. That sounds awful. Now they have an actual like WAV source file of that, so they can actually listen to the music in a decent manner. And I feel like that's done nothing but help me and my label and the bands that I've been working with.
Cool. Do you think I guess that's kind of the whole future thing. I was just curious, whether you think that kind of tying back into the resurgence of vinyl, whether any of that has anything to kind of do with. I've always kind of wondered myself whether the idea of buying things now becomes more of a collector's thing rather than actually purchasing the music itself.
Sure. I mean, for a while, I think the whole collector's thing in terms of vinyl stuff is chilled out. I hate doing colored vinyl. I think when a label it used to be where like a label would release like 5 different color formats of a record, and it's like, yeah, okay, maybe you want to do something fun and have collectible things for people, but every single one of those labels knows that there's going to be some fanatic kids out there that want every copy of it. And some of those labels, I'm not saying all, because obviously like I'm friends with a lot of those labels and I've done some multicolor pressings of stuff too, but like some of them, do I think that some of them are trying to cash in on that? Yeah, could be. I mean, I don't know them personally, so I can't say for sure. I haven't talked to them about it or called them out on it. But it very well could be. And when it comes down to, I guess, going forward with the collectability of stuff, I just like to do everything on 180 gram black because I like the aesthetic of it. I mean, people argue about whether or not it sounds better or whatever, and I'm not going to get involved in that sort of like trying to take a position on that because I'm not I don't know enough about audio to really be able to say. But there's always going to be some collectability to vinyl, especially as major labels are kind of like bowing out, it seems, a little bit more out of the vinyl market, and there's probably going to be less available. They realize that they don't know how to really market vinyl records anymore. They just want to charge $30 for everything, and nobody wants to pay that. And I mean, if it's collectible or not, I mean, I personally don't get collectability of stuff. I with my comic CDs and records, I buy it, I listen to it when I'm sick of it, or I read it, and when I'm sick of it, I give it to somebody, or I trade it, or sell it online, or whatever. So it's kind of hard for me to kind of wrap my brain around all the collectability stuff. But I feel like it's been waning, and it's something that will probably kind of steady off. But I don't think it's ever going to be like it was over the past 5 years or so.
Okay. Well, I think before we move on into talking about the festival, I've got a Krallis song here, and you were mentioning, I guess maybe you want to elaborate a little bit more how you got to working with Krallis and what you like about this band.
Sure. Like I said, Colin had reached out to me when they were getting ready to do their first record with Profound Lore, and it was something that was sort of in this realm. I mean, a lot of people argue about whether or not they're black metal. I think it's inarguable that they're heavily influenced by black metal, whether or not you feel they are actually part of that genre itself or not. But that sort of style was something I hadn't really gotten into much in terms of the label or myself personally at the time. I mean, I never really was, nor am I even now, terribly interested in a lot of what people call like the classic black metal stuff from from Europe at all. I mean, I love a lot of the newer bands. I love Ascension. Blue Dust Nord's been around a while, I guess, and I really, really like them quite a bit. But as far as like the bands that sort of founded the genre, I still, even to this day, don't really have a ton of interest in them. But when I heard Krallis, there was a lot of elements in there enjoying a lot of tech metal stuff and things like that I really enjoyed. And I had done that split between Thou and Leech obviously has their own style, or had their own style of sort of like odd, weird, I guess what people would call Cascadian black metal or atmospheric black metal stuff. And it was just a record that I thought was cool and very, very individual, and a band that was doing their own thing and displayed an immense amount of talent and skill in songwriting. And that was one of the big reasons I decided to kind of take a chance and do a record with a band that nobody had really ever heard of and that had never toured and was just kind of going for it. And I'm glad I did, because they're still one of my favorite bands, and everything they've done I've been very, very pleased with.
Cool. Well, I've got, this is Fetus and Fidu by Kralis, so let's take a listen. We'll be back in a minute. All right, that was Kralis with Fetus and Fidu. I'm still joined by Adam from Gilead Media. And now I would like to talk to him about the festival that I have been gushing about for a long time here. The Gilead Music Festival. So I guess first thing is, what inspired you to put this on?
Well, over the past couple of years, not last year, but the two before that, I had gone down to Dude Fest down in Indianapolis, which is put on by a guy named Derek, who was in that band Phoenix Bodies, and there were always a lot of great bands that played there. I saw Pig Destroyer there, which was fucking great, and oh shoot, I shouldn't say that, should I? I probably.
This is internet radio. You can.
Oh, I can.
All you
okay,
want.
cool.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. So I was going to ask you about that before, and I forgot. I get going sometimes. I get excited about music, and I say stuff. So, but yeah, like it was great to see Pig Destroyer again because I hardly ever I saw them maybe like 3 times ever. And then Torch and a lot of other great bands. Skeleton, which was like not normally the type of band I like, but really, really fun live. So
Yeah.
I really, and I had tables at both those, where Gilead Media tables selling records and stuff, and it was really fun, and it just seemed like it was like a great environment where all these people came. There was like kids from Norway that flew in for that, and I was like, how awesome for all these people that maybe some of them have spoken online or traded records or bought records from people, and they all get to meet when they come to this festival and appreciate these bands they all like. And then last year, I drove down to Milwaukee for the UTEC Records Music Festival, and it was like I had heard Locrian and I had heard House of Low Culture, and there were a couple others on the lineup that I recognized, but in general I wasn't terribly familiar with a lot of the stuff on UTEC Records at the time, but I knew a lot of people were really into the label, and I figured if there's this festival where, you know, there's some serious musicians playing, I should just drive down and check it out. And it was actually kind of a bummer because Buried at Sea was playing in Chicago that night, doing a sort of a quote reunion-ish sort of show.
Yeah.
So it was a bummer missing that. But going to the UTEC Records Music Fest, I drove down alone from Oshkosh, and it was a ton of fun. And I really enjoyed every performance that night. And Locrian just blew my mind. They were one of the best bands I'd seen in a long time live. So on the way back, driving home at 2 o'clock in the morning from Milwaukee, totally freaking out on caffeine, I was just like, well, if Ken can do this show in Milwaukee and with all these kind of obscure or some of, fairly obscure bands, and it had a really good turnout, it was very successful for him, then I wonder if I can convince all these bands I work with to come play Oshkosh or Milwaukee or somewhere near here, and people would actually be into it. And it was the next week I just kind of sent a blanket email out to all the bands and just was like, hey, I'm kind of thinking about doing this. Would you be interested? And a lot of them were really into it. And actually Kralis, people probably noticed the lack of Kralis being on the lineup, and they were really interested, but because of some availability issues, they couldn't make it. But otherwise, most of the other bands I've worked with over the past couple of years are going to be making their way out, and it's due in large part to those experiences at the UTEC Records Music Fest and at Dude Fest in Indianapolis.
So, obviously being from Wisconsin and everything, I was kind of surprised at the location of Oshkosh chosen. Was that on purpose, because it's close to home, or you just think it'd be interesting to throw something kind of, I guess, as far as venues for a large get-together like this, kind of in the middle of nowhere?
Sure. It kind of ended up being a little bit of both. I had originally talked with Corey from Halo Flies and Eric from Northless about potentially doing it in Milwaukee and having them help me kind of put it together. But because of the venue situations down there and what I kind of wanted for a venue, which was definitely something a little bit more intimate, it just, and expenses too in renting a venue, it just wasn't really going to work out very well. And I decided that with as busy as I knew I'd be, I wouldn't have time if I needed to go to Milwaukee to take care of something or try to, it was easier for me with connections I had in Oshkosh to kind of put it together. And then once I started thinking about it, it kind of seemed fitting where for the past 6 years I've been sending records all over the world to people that have been supportive of the label and of these bands, that it would be kind of fun for them to sort of follow that path back here and see the town where the label actually operates out of, instead of throwing the fest in some bigger city that people might already be familiar with. kind of commuting to this small town in the middle of nowhere where people would probably generally not go, and to sort of share in that experience in a totally foreign, unfamiliar place.
So, this is a all ages show, correct?
Yes, it is.
As in not 18 and up either. I believe it's dry all weekend, isn't it?
Yeah, as of right now, that is the plan. There were some the building it's in is actually very, very large. It's sort of like an old Eagles club, and the festival there's a basement that has bowling alleys and a bar, which I actually think is officially a different part of considered a different venue. So don't know if the city's going to allow the venue to sell alcohol down there or not by the bowling alleys, but there's still some stuff that I think the venue's trying to work out with the city in terms of where alcohol can be sold in the building when there's an all ages event going on. The show is actually going to be on the second floor, in a smaller sort of. It actually looks kind of like a crazy Viking dining hall with a big fireplace and vaulted ceilings and everything. It's kind of neat, and it's going to be a cool setting for this stuff. So as of right now, the plan is to do it all dry, just because that's what we'll need to do to make it work with the city, and having the event be all ages, which was something that was important for me in the bands. We didn't want to have any sort of exclusions on age. I mean, I doubt there's going to be anyone real young there. I doubt there's going to be many people under the age of 18. But we didn't. A lot of the bands were kind of vocal about making sure everyone could attend.
Cool. And why Saturday and Sunday? I'm just thinking, all these people coming from so far away.
If people are going to be traveling from, if they're going to be coming in from far away, they're going to have to take off work anyway on either Friday or Monday or both. And I don't know. I was weighing options, and a lot of the stuff ended up being with some of the bands that were traveling out. It worked better for them to be on Saturdays and Sundays. There were some other just sort of minor travel issues, and because I was going back and forth between having it be Friday, Saturday versus Saturday, Sunday for a while, and it just, the way things were coming together, it worked out better to do it this way.
Cool. So I guess just to kind of give people an idea, what's the setup going to kind of be like there? Is there going to be a lot of like room for merch tables, stuff like that? Is it pretty much just going to concentrate on the show and let the bands kind of fend for themselves?
No, there's going to be, the room is kind of like thinner and longer. So lining the room, there's kind of going to be a lot of tables where bands will have merch set up. So any of the bands that are, if they're going to be around all weekend, they can kind of have a merch table. And then Corey from Halo Flies is going to be bringing his distro. I think Adam who runs Paysanta Urfolk is going to be bringing some distro stuff out too. I'm going to have sort of a little merch table there all weekend where I'll actually be selling some Dark Tower books and some other limited things. And I actually haven't announced this yet, so I guess it's sort of like the exclusive announcement, but I'm going to be selling a bunch of test pressings and stuff too.
Oh, wow.
And hopefully some other sort of like fun limited things, some screen printed posters for the fest that Brian Proto from Nature's Mortis is working on designing. Then I think Ruben from Rainbath Visual is working on a poster design too. So I'm going to be screen printing a bunch of fun stuff like that, selling test pressings, and yeah, there's going to be a few distros there and bands merch and all sorts of fun stuff for people to spend some money on.
Sweet. I guess so. Then last couple things is people want to get a hold of you both for the label and about the festival. I know you've got to be pretty close to sold out on this festival from what I understand.
Yeah, there's probably only about 10 or 12 weekend passes left, I'd say. And then a few Saturday passes, but that's about it. If people want to pick up any passes, though, I still have some for sale. There's probably not going to be any available at the door. So if people try to show up at the door with their buddies and think they're going to get in, I'm gonna sorry, it's going to be a bummer. I'm sure it's going to happen, but people can head on over to gileadmedia.net. And once you kind of get to that page, there's sort of like a landing page where you can go view the fest info or go to the label page and find out more about the label and the history. And there's like a 25,000 word discography page where I kind of have stories about every record I've done. And then the fest obviously has lineup for the bands each day, and then links so you can listen to all of them and tickets, what small amount of tickets are still for sale there.
Well, awesome. I'd like to thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. It's been fun. I love chatting.
Awesome. I had a great time, too. So we've got one last song that you asked for me to play. This is Northless. What would you like to say about this?
I guess one thing I'd like to say about Northless is they're the heaviest band I have ever seen live, ever. There's something about them. There's something about their tone and their songs, and I don't know, but there's never been a band I've seen live that can stand up to how they sound and how they perform. It's awesome. Like the word crushing, you're always compelled to use the word crushing for heavy bands, and I feel like it's the most applicable for them, but it's almost like it doesn't do them justice at the same time. And I feel like they're a band that when people sort of experience it live, they're gonna. I feel like a lot of people have slept on that band and not really given them a fair shake, and when they see them live, they're gonna regret it.
Agreed. All right. Well, thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you.
And I look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks.
Absolutely. We'll talk to you then.
All right. Thanks. This is Northless with Sundowner. Crank it up.